biodynamics. It's a big controversy out there. There's some people that are biodynamics is a hoax, and some people that love biodynamics. And I've actually spoken with winemakers that will be having conversations, and they'll be telling me how much they hate biodynamics and how silly they think it is. And the next topic that comes up is Talos Creek, and they can't say enough good things about you. So how do you manage to skirt that issue, and where do you stand on the biodynamics?
So I would say that we are skeptical biodynamicists. I think the fundamental piece of biodynamics is that it's in your best interests to encourage as much diversity as you can in your vineyard. Vineyards are naturally prone to being a monoculture, that you have vines and nothing else in your land, and monocultures are inherently unstable. So what you have, if all you have is vineyard, is you have an environment that will attract pests that eat grapevines. You probably don't have much that control the pests that eat grapevines, because all you have is grapevines. So I think the fundamental piece of biodynamics for us is to try to build an environment, an ecosystem that's as resilient as possible, to plant other species as much as we can within the grapevine. You can see some of the fruit trees. I'm sitting in front of an apple tree, pears and peaches and quinces and olive trees, and different kinds of flowering plants, and things that'll attract different populations of insects, different microorganisms in the soil. And that just seems to us like good common sense with farming. You avoid all of the poisons and other things that you can do anyway if you're farming organically, where you're doing it in the interest of creating an ecosystem that's alive and resilient. I think that some of the aspects of biodynamics that come under the most fire are a little silly, honestly. I mean, do we bury the cow horns with different preparations of quartz and manure and things like that in them? Yeah, because it's not really very hard to do, and it certainly seems like it can't do any harm. Do I think makes a big difference in the things that we produce and the health of the vineyard? No, not really. And then there are aspects of biodynamics that I think can actually be harmful if you take them too literally, like a lot of the prescriptions for farming by certain cycles of the moon. If you wait to the appropriate lunar cycle to pick and ignore the signs that you're getting from your vines as to when they're ripe, you can actually do yourself damage. And all of the serious biodynamic wineries that I know are pretty loose with the calendar things, and because that's the one place where I think you can actually be led down an alley that will take you someplace back.
Right. Well, the parents farm biodynamically in France, right?
Though they too are flexible about it.
With the parents and with this vineyard being as young on a European scale as it is, so you were saying the growing season is slightly longer here?
Yeah, so the climate here is a little more extreme.
Mm-hmm.
It is hotter during the day, colder at night. The winters are colder here. The summers are a little hotter here. So what you have here is you have a more extremes for both hot and cold. But you also have a longer period in which it's safe to pick. So we don't get our first real risks of serious winter storms until the middle of November.
Okay.
There, by the end of October, it's starting to be risky. So if we need to wait on things like Mourvedre and Roussanne that ripen late, we can wait without a lot of late season risk. But broadly, for sure, the climates are similar. But like anything else, the deeper into it you delve, the more you realize that there are real differences.
With that, because you're growing the same style grapes, and actually grapes the vines that have come from parent vineyards and such, what are you noticing as the vineyard matures here as far as similarities and differences between the wines coming out of the wineries?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when you taste the wines when they're young, you get more primary expression of fruit and acid from here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that should be unsurprising if you think of how much more sun there is here, and the days are a little bit hotter and the nights are colder. So when we pick the same grapes, we pick with a little bit higher sugars and higher acids. So that highlights that kind of primary fruit, bright character. And I think masks some of the earth characteristics when the wines are young. As the wines age and those initial primary characteristics calm down, Then a lot of the earth and meat, and at least in the reds, and some of the like caramel, honey, herby characteristics in the whites, those come out, and the wines actually grow together as they age. If you taste something which is 6 or 8 years old, it's going to taste a lot more like than they would have when they were newly bottled.
Gotcha. With wines and with aging wines, I mean, so many of your wines here are meant to be aged, which is different from most of the vineyards in California. You know, people don't think long term. I mean, this comes from a lot of the French influence there for thinking much longer term than most California wineries. What kind of a library do you guys keep here? Like at the end of every, because I mean, you've got the vintage chart. I refer to it constantly, and I wish everyone did a vintage chart. But how much library stock then do you have to hold in reserve so that you have that because you are aging?
So we keep at least 5 cases of everything. We'll keep 10 cases of anything that we think will age pretty well, and then 20 cases of all of our Esprits and Panoply. And then we also keep a library, and that's just really for academic purposes. So these are things that we can taste later. We can pull out for a seminar if we want to. We can donate them to an event. I mean, we have them available, because once they're gone, they're gone. You can't get them back.
Yeah.
And then in addition to that, starting in 2003, we started keeping more significant libraries of our Esprit Red and White for us to release later when they're aged. We think they're aged appropriately. So we created a library version of our wine club a few years ago,
Right.
that includes a couple of bottles of an aged red Esprit and a bottle of an aged white Esprit that we want to show off, because I mean, we know that there are a lot of consumer